In a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and golden farmlands, there stood a modest restaurant that everyone in town knew about. Miss Bethel has a local restaurant where people eat. Not the best food, but people like to go there. Miss Bethel herself was a warm, kind-hearted woman. She was very hard-working and loved to cook her own food, and that admiration made people visit her restaurant often. The restaurant was always busy, with lots of people eating there and socializing. But beyond this, Miss Bethel was admired for raising her daughter Zina all by herself. Zina was a remarkable child, a prodigy. At 15 years old, she was the brightest student in her school, excelling in every subject. Her teachers often said Zina will grow up to change the world one day, and Miss Bethel believed it with all her heart. The villagers were equally amazed by Zina's brilliance. She had a knack for solving puzzles and would spend hours studying books that even adults found difficult. The village was small, with only a few schools, but Zina was already outshining all her classmates. Her future seemed bright and full of promise. However, life has a way of turning peaceful moments into challenging ones. One hot afternoon, while preparing stew for the evening rush, Miss Bethel accidentally spilled a pot of boiling oil. The searing pain shot up her arm, and she screamed out in agony. Her neighbors quickly rushed her to the local hospital where the doctor treated her burns. Though she was grateful to be recovering, the injury meant she couldn't cook for a while. Back at the restaurant, Miss Bethel knew she had a problem. She was the heart of the kitchen, and there was no one else who could prepare the food like she did. She considered closing the restaurant for a few days, but the thought of disappointing her loyal customers made her feel uneasy. It was during one of these quiet moments of worry that Zina approached her. "Mama, I've watched you cook for as long as I can remember. I know all your recipes by heart," Zina said, her eyes bright with determination. "Let me run the restaurant until you're better." Miss Bethel was taken aback. "Zina, you're only a child. You have school to focus on. Running the restaurant is too much of a responsibility for you." "But it's only on the weekends, Mama. I can do it when I'm not at school," Zina pleaded, her voice soft but insistent. After much hesitation and many promises from Zina, Miss Bethel finally agreed. "Only on weekends," she said, her voice firm, "and only if you promise to keep up with your studies." That weekend, Zina put on her apron and stepped into the kitchen. She was nervous at first, but as she began to cook, the familiar rhythms of chopping, stirring, and seasoning came naturally to her. She had watched her mother for years, learning every trick and technique, and now it was her turn to use them. When the customers arrived and tasted the food, they were astonished. "This is even better than before," one man exclaimed, licking his fingers clean. Word spread quickly, and by the fourth weekend, people from neighboring villages came to taste the dishes cooked by the little chef. Miss Bethel was proud and amazed. Her daughter, the same girl who excelled in academics, was now keeping the family business alive. As Zina balanced her schoolwork and weekend cooking, the restaurant flourished like never before. By the time school holidays came around, Zina was able to cook every day, and business soared. One afternoon, as Zina sat in the restaurant after the lunch rush, a letter arrived. It was from a prestigious school in the city. The letter was an invitation. Zina had been offered a full scholarship to study there. But there was a catch. She needed to pass a highly competitive entry exam to secure her place. Miss Bethel was thrilled for her daughter, but the news also filled her with fear. If Zina left for the city, who would help run the restaurant? Though Miss Bethel's arm was healing, business had changed. Customers preferred Zina's cooking. They flocked to the restaurant when she was in the kitchen, but when Miss Bethel tried to return, they stopped coming as often. This realization weighed heavily on her heart. As the exam date drew closer, Miss Bethel found herself torn between her love for her daughter and her fear of losing their customers. She tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept creeping back into her mind. One evening, when the village was quiet, Miss Bethel made a fateful decision. She visited a local herbalist, a woman known for her strange powers and remedies. "I need help," Miss Bethel whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't let my daughter leave. I need her to stay." The herbalist studied Miss Bethel for a long moment before nodding slowly. She handed over a small pouch filled with ash. "Mark her with this," the herbalist said, her voice low and ominous. "It will dim her brilliance, but be warned, there is always a price." That night, while Zina slept peacefully, Miss Bethel tiptoed into her room. Her heart pounded in her chest as she gently placed the ash on Zina's forehead, then wiped it away. It was a small act, one she convinced herself was harmless, but it would soon unravel everything. A few days later, a man who had been frequenting the restaurant came in one day and saw Zina. A sharp, feverish feeling ran over him as he saw her. The man has powers and could see something straight away in Zina. He left immediately but came back the following day to see if the same thing will happen. When it did, he approached Zina. He was tall, with piercing eyes that seemed to see straight through her. His spirit was sure of what he had seen. He mentioned to Zina, "There's a mark on your head," he said quietly, "and it looks like your mother put it there to make you fail an important exam." Zina scoffed. "That's impossible. My mother would never do such a thing." But the man persisted, returning to the restaurant day after day, watching her with sad eyes. "The mark is real. If you want to see it for yourself, come with me." As the days passed, Zina noticed something strange. Her sharp mind, once quick and clear, now felt foggy. No matter how hard she studied, the information slipped through her fingers like sand. When the exam day arrived, Zina sat at her desk, staring at the questions, unable to focus. Her heart raced as she realized she couldn't remember anything she had learned. The results came in a week later and Zina had failed. Badly. She couldn't believe it. Tears streamed down her face as she clung to her mother for comfort. "I don't understand, Mama. I studied so hard." Miss Bethel held her close, guilt striking her soul. She had done this. She had cursed her own daughter. Curiosity and doubt began to grow inside Zina. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One evening she was at the restaurant. She looked out for the man and went to him. "Can you prove what you said to me?" she asked. The man nodded and said, "Come with me." She followed him and they both departed into the bush. They came to a shrine deep in the forest. There, in the flickering light of the candles, he revealed the truth. He brought out a sacred mirror, and there, Zina saw it, the faint outline of a mark on her forehead. Her heart sank as she realized the man was right. Devastated, she asked if it was her mother that put it there. The man nodded again and told her she did it, so she could fail her exam and remain in the village to continue cooking at the restaurant, as everyone now liked her food. She thought to herself, "She wanted to ruin my life for money?" Zina confronted her mother. "How could you do this to me?" she demanded, tears streaming down her face. Miss Bethel was surprised and denied doing anything. Zina told her where she had been, what she saw, and how she was sure it was her mother. Unable to hide the truth any longer, Miss Bethel wept, going on her knees and holding her daughter's leg. "I was afraid, Zina. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. I thought if you stayed, we could keep the restaurant going and everything would be fine." Zina packed her things, heartbroken and betrayed. She moved in with her best friend's family, unable to forgive her mother just yet. She went to the man who helped to free her from the curse. Zina's brilliance returned. She was given another chance to take the scholarship exam, and this time she passed with flying colours. The city school welcomed her with open arms, and Zina left the village to chase her dreams. Back in the village, Miss Bethel's life crumbled. Without Zina, the restaurant lost its magic. The customers stopped coming, and soon the doors of her once thriving business closed for good. Alone and racked with guilt, Miss Bethel could no longer bear the weight of her actions. One dark evening, she ended her life. When Zina heard the news, she returned to the village, her heart heavy with sorrow. She cried for her mother, not just for the life that had been lost, but for the love that had been twisted by fear and greed. Though Zina was devastated, she was surrounded by her new family, her best friend's parents, who comforted her with open arms. Years passed, and Zina grew into a brilliant scholar, traveling the world and achieving great things. She never forgot her mother, nor the lessons she learned from the painful choices that had been made. And while her heart would always carry the scars of betrayal, Zina chose to live her life with kindness, compassion, and a determination to never let fear drive her choices. And in the quiet evenings, as the sun dipped below the hills, Zina would sometimes think of Miss Bethel and the little restaurant that had once brought them so much joy. Though the past could not be changed, Zina had learned to forgive, and in doing so, she found peace.